Anansi and Turtle, retold by Mary Furlow. One day Anansi was just sitting down to the table in his house to eat some baked yams. Now Turtle had been crawling all day, traveling from one place to another, and just as he came to Anansi's house, he smelled the most delicious food he had ever smelled. Since he had been traveling all day, he was hungry, so he went up to Anansi's house and knocked. Anansi came to the doorway, looking real mean, hoping that whoever had knocked would go away. He pretended not to see Turtle and gazed up high as he looked out the door. Down here, said Turtle, who was very low to the ground. Oh, it's you, Turtle, said Anansi. What do you want? Well, I have been traveling all day, said Turtle, and I was wondering if you would share your meal with me. Now Anansi looked down at Turtle and said, Oh, all right, come on in here. For you see, it was the polite custom in Anansi's country to share your meal with anyone who came to your door at mealtime. Anansi brought Turtle in and said, Sit down, have a seat. Turtle crawled up to the table and sat in a chair. Help yourself, said Anansi. Turtle was just about to help himself to the baked yams on the table when Anansi hollered out, Turtle, don't you know better than to come to the table with dirty hands? Turtle looked down at his hands, and sure enough, they were dirty because he'd been crawling all day. So Turtle got up and went outside to the creek. He washed his hands, and for good measure, he washed his face too. By the time he got back to the house and crawled up on the chair, Anansi had already started to eat. But as Turtle started to help himself, Anansi said again, Turtle, I told you can't come to the table and help yourself with dirty hands. Turtle looked down, and sure enough, his hands were dusty again because he had crawled back up the trail from the creek, and the trail was dusty. So Turtle got down from his place and started down the trail again. In the meantime, Anansi was eating as fast as he could, stuffing his face, trying to eat everything so he wouldn't have to share. Turtle got down to the creek and washed his hands again, but this time when he came out of the creek, he made sure he crawled back on the grass. He got back to the house, back up to his place at the table, and started to help himself. But Anansi was just stuffing his last bite of yams into his mouth. Turtle looked at Anansi and said slowly, Thank you for sharing your meal with me, Anansi. If you're ever in my part of the country, why don't you come by and share a meal with me? Turtle crawled down and went on his way. Anansi thought about it and wanted to enjoy the free meal at Turtle's house. Finally, after a few weeks, he couldn't stand it any longer, so he set out to find where Turtle lived. Anansi got up early one morning and began to travel. He crept from one bush to another all day long, just taking his time, until he finally came to the place where Turtle lived. Now Turtle lived at the bottom of the creek, but as Anansi walked up, Turtle was sitting on the bank, sunning himself. It was just about the supper hour. Turtle looked at Anansi and said, Welcome, Anansi. Did you come to share a meal with me? Yes, said Anansi. All right, Anansi, said Turtle. You sit here on the bank and wait while I go set the table. Turtle dived down under the creek to his house. Anansi was up on the bank, dancing around on all his legs. He couldn't wait. Finally, Turtle came up and said, Come down, Anansi, the table is all ready. Turtle dived down under the water and sat at his table. Anansi jumped in the water to dive like Turtle did, but he went just under the surface of the water and then popped back up and floated on the top. He tried to dive again and went just below the surface of the water, then popped back up and floated on the top. He stuck his head under the water and he could see Turtle down there under the creek, slowly eating his meal. There was a plate set for Anansi, but he couldn't get to it. Anansi swam to the edge of the creek and climbed a tree. He jumped off, he dived off. He climbed up and did a belly flop, but every time he hit the water, he would go just under the surface a little bit and then pop right back up and float. Anansi just could not get himself to sink. But Anansi was not about to miss his chance for a free meal. He swam to the shore and danced about on all his legs, trying to think of a way to get down to Turtle's table. I know, he said out loud. I've got pockets. So he started picking up pebbles and putting them in his jacket pockets. Then he jumped back in the water, sank down, and landed in the chair Turtle had set out for him. There was the most beautiful banquet Anansi had ever seen on the table. Turtle had clams, he had eel, he had lily pads, he even had watercress sandwiches. He had everything Anansi could think of, and Turtle was sitting there helping himself to the fine meal very slowly. Anansi filled his bowl with some of each delicious kind of food and was just about to start eating when Turtle looked at Anansi and said, "In my country, one must always take off his jacket before sitting at the table." It was true. Turtle had taken off his own jacket before sitting down to eat. Anansi looked at the food, looked at Turtle, and slowly took off his jacket with the pebbles in the pockets. The jacket sank to the bottom, and Anansi popped back up to the surface and floated on top. Below him, he could see Turtle slowly finishing his meal. When you set out to outsmart someone, there's usually someone out there who can outsmart you. Number 1. Which sentence from the passage best supports the conclusion that Anansi is selfish? A. One day Anansi was just sitting down to the table in his house to eat some baked yams. B. Anansi came to the doorway looking real mean, hoping that whoever had knocked would go away. C. He pretended not to see Turtle and gazed up high as he looked out the door. D. For you see, it was the polite custom in Anansi's country to share your meal with anyone who came to your door at mealtime. Number 2. Read the paragraph from the passage. Now Anansi looked down at Turtle and said, "Oh, all right, come on in here." For you see, it was the polite custom in Anansi's country to share your meal with anyone who came to your door at mealtime. Anansi brought Turtle in and said, "Sit down, have a seat." Turtle crawled up the table and sat in a chair. "Help yourself," said Anansi. What does the use of the word custom suggest? A. It was a tradition to invite people in. B. It was polite to share. C. It was unusual to be so welcoming. D. It was a harsh checkpoint after traveling. Number 3. What did Anansi put in his pockets? A. Yams. B. Pebbles. C. Stones. D. Tree branches. Number 4, Part A. Which sentence best shows the theme of the text? A. Don't judge a book by its cover. B. Always be kind to others. C. What goes around comes around. D. The grass is always greener on the other side. 5. Part B. Which sentence from the passage best supports your answer to Part A? A. If you're ever in my part of the country, why don't you come by and share a meal with me? B. There was the most beautiful banquet Anansi had ever seen on the table. C. Anansi was not about to miss his chance for a free meal. D. When you set out to outsmart someone, there's usually someone out there who can outsmart you.